what his opponents then in 2016 what they're doing now. I can't remember those times. The key words you'd use when he was in power as the president of this country were that there was corruption everywhere, and that there was incompetence everywhere, and that he was not delivering. Staying out of power, observing his opponents rule this country, what does he make of it? It's become necessary for me to start a conversation on this tone because of what happened yesterday during the State of the Nation address, and he sat through and listened to His Excellency the President Nana Akufo-Addo deliver the State of the Nation address. We will start from there. Good morning, Mr. Mahama. Thank you very much for joining us this morning.
Good morning, Ishan, is it?
Yes, Ishan.
Okay, good.
How are you doing, sir?
I'm good, and you?
By God's grace, I'm doing well.
Very good.
Yesterday you sat through, I saw you on telly listening to former President Nana Akufo-Addo deliver the State of the Nation address. Sitting through, what was running through your mind?
Oh, well, the State of the Nation address is a constitutional requirement under Article 67 for the President to brief not only the Ghanaian public but the international audience of what the state of our nation is in terms of the major issues. And so the President fulfilled it by coming to Parliament yesterday. People take a cue from the State of the Nation address what to expect in the year. And so normally the State of the Nation speech must inspire a certain confidence in the people that government is on track, and these are the major programs that government is going to be embarking on during the year. And so if you look at the statement that was given yesterday, I think I'll not be the best person to judge because of my own prejudices, but I think that was a bit too futuristic. Government will do this, we want to do this, we want to do this. After 2 years in office, I mean, I thought that there would be some more solid things to point out. Unfortunately, there was not much there. It was more about, we tend to do this, we're going to bring this, we're going to do this, we're going to do this. But I guess I listened to the after address commentary too, and there were voice pops from ordinary Ghanaians, and you can see that they were looking for some things that they didn't find in there. I mean, if you go to Abosokai, they were looking for, some relief in respect of import duties and other high fees and levies, and they didn't find it there. If you spoke to nurses and teachers, they were looking to hear something about their plight in terms of unemployment, in terms of allowances, in terms of opportunities for them. And people have even started contradicting some of the things. The President said 14,000 nurses have been employed. Just this morning I was looking online, and the Unemployed Nurses Association or something says that's not true. So I think if we listen to the after commentary, whoever put the speech together could have done a much better job.
You spoke about being a former president and your prejudices that may show per your own observations, but you are an ordinary citizen now, and that you are a citizen of this country. You said the statement is supposed to inspire Ghanaians. Were you inspired as an ordinary citizen?
Well, that's why I said I should take note of my own prejudices, because I'm a potential leader of the biggest opposition party, and that's why I was very careful in choosing my words.
Yeah, but were you inspired?
I don't want to make a judgment on the speech. I've been there before, and I know how it is. But I'm just saying that it's better for the people to judge, and I've told you what I've heard from the people, and so I'll rather reserve my own judgment about it. But I think that, like I said, the purpose of such a speech is to lift the spirit of the nation, and I don't know if Ghanaians really felt lifted.
Were your expectations met yesterday?
You're pushing me to the wall. You want me to make a judgment on that speech?
What were your expectations met, sir?
Well, I've given you an overview of what the speech was. And I think that even in some cases the President was misinformed. There were quite grievous mistakes in there. For instance, the Access Oil fine. the Akes oil field.
Yeah.
He attributed the find to their government. No, the discovery was made by Hess in 2013. And so those discoveries he talks about, Paradise, Hickory, and others, were made by Hess in 2013. Akes just came and did an appraisal and bought into the field. And so you cannot say that that discovery was made under you. And aside from that, my government did quite a lot to bring the kind of revenue that his government is receiving. We worked on the 10 fields. I inaugurated the FPSO Asamils. I inaugurated the FPSO. We ordered the FPSO John Kufuor and named it after John Kufuor. And so all that work was done under the NDC administration. Happily for him, all the revenues came after 2017, and so he has enhanced oil revenues because of the work we did. And much of the deficit and the good macroeconomic figures you're seeing are because of the work that we did. I predicted in 2016 that the economy was going to grow by 8-point-something% because we had figured all the things that we had done out. We had carried out the homegrown fiscal reforms and all that. And so he was just a beneficiary, of the heavy lifting that we did under our government. So like I'm saying, in the SONA, there were some previous misinformation in respect of the oil sector. It didn't talk about foreign exchange. Today, the most pressing thing with the economy is the foreign exchange. And that's what everybody is talking about. And so to give a State of the Nation address and not talk about what you're going to do to stabilize the currency, I think was a grievous omission. I mean, it's moved suddenly with lightning speed to 5.4, I said yesterday. And when, especially in your quest for power, your party said that the foreign exchange was so important, the foreign exchange rate was so important because it exposes the weakness of fundamentals. I'm sure you're aware of that. Yeah. Then when you have the foreign exchange sliding so fast, then you ask, is there something wrong with the fundamentals?
Well, I'm sure it's come to your attention, the argument that the rate of depreciation is not as fast as it was back then, 2015, 2016, when you were in power.
Well, when I was in power, I didn't claim to have arrested the dollar and given the key to the IGP, did I? Everybody knows that you can have volatility with the foreign exchange rate. And at any time it happens, you take measures to try and stabilize it. It depends on issues to do with trade. I mean, if the price of cocoa and oil fall down any time, it affects the amount of foreign exchange you're bringing into the economy. And so once that is affected and there's a demand for it, it's based on the law of demand and supply. And so I don't think that it is safe for any government to say that you would absolutely stabilize the dollar. And we never claimed to do that. But, I mean, this government claimed that they had actually arrested it and locked it up and given the key to the IGP. And on the lighter note, somebody said, they found out that the dollar that was arrested was $11 billion, not the US dollar. And so the IGP had to grant it bail, But exchange rate is one major issue that needs to be looked at because we have what we call import inflation. Because a lot of products are imported, when the foreign exchange slides, it affects the prices of those goods and services that are imported. And so it can contribute to an increase in inflation. And then aside from that, if you have a slide in the foreign exchange, it makes it unpredictable what the business environment is because business people factor the value of the foreign currency into their operations. So at the beginning of the year, when they're doing their budgets and everything, they want to know what the average price of the dollar across the year will be. And so if in the year it slides, or it goes into free fall, then it affects the budgets and other things that they do. So I think that's one of the areas that the economic managers must be looking at critically.
I'll bring you back to, the issues to do with Ghana as a nation, being a former president, but I think it's only appropriate that as your host, how you've been all these years, for the past 3 years, how have you been and what have you been up to?
Well, I've been good. Initially, it was nice to be out of the pressure of office. It can take quite a toll on you in terms of your own well-being, and in terms of your relationships with family and all that. If you do your work as president properly, you have very little time for other things, and it can affect your family relationships, it can affect your own health, and so you need to be cautious about that.
Did it affect yours?
Well, thank God I'm in good health, but yes, there were times you feel so tired, and if you don't take care of your health properly, it can affect you. I was doing medical checks regularly, so the doctors would advise, what to do and all that. But since I left office, I've been in high demand on the continent and internationally to speak about my experiences in office, and also to project the lessons of Ghana as a beacon of democracy to other African countries. And so one of the issues I've been involved in is advocacy for democratic consolidation in terms of good governance, respect for human rights, elections. I've been involved in many election observation missions in many African countries. And I've given lectures across the length and breadth of the continent and outside the continent. So that's what I've been basically involved in. But I've also been involved in restructuring our party and supporting our executives to put the party back on its feet again. And so those are the main things that I've been doing.
Would you say so far the restructuring exercise or efforts of your party has gone well?
I think it's gone very well. We came out of 2016, with a very low morale in the party. The defeat really affected, our supporters, and the initial reaction was to play the blame game. Everybody was blaming everybody else for our loss, and I think that we put that behind us. The party handled it very well. The National Executive Committee set up the Constitutory Committee, which went around, allowed our people to vent, and everybody said his piece and, blamed everybody else. Eventually I came out and said, look, I take responsibility for it as the Commander-in-Chief who led the army to war. I mean, if you lose, then you must take responsibility, which I did. And it was just to stop us throwing mud at each other. And I think that it was largely successful. The Constitutory Committee finished its work, presented its report to the party executives, and they've looked at it. I've looked at it too. And I think that the party has been very diligent in following a lot of the recommendations that were given in that report. One, they started the re-registration of members, which is one of the key recommendations given by the Constitutory Committee. And they did the re-registration of members at the branch level instead of the former biometric register that we had. And so if you go to every polling station branch, we have a register of members that has the names and photographs of all the members in that branch. I belong to the District Assembly polling stations branch of the Bole Bamboy constituency, and so if you go in there and you look in the register, my name is there, and I have my card, from that branch. And so it makes it a more trustworthy document than we had before when we had the biometric register, because people complain that names were imported into the biometric register in order to give people advantages over others. And so when we did the parliamentary primaries and all that, a lot of people were dissatisfied. Some ran as independent candidates, others who didn't run as independent candidates were undermining the official candidates, and so it was all a whole bunch of confusion. They also recommended reorganization of the party, and so we started it. We've done branch elections. And for the first time, the branch elections were very competitive. I've gone around this country, I've met our branch executives, and I'm impressed at the quality and caliber of people who stood for those positions at that level. And when I see our branch executives, it gives me very good encouragement that we have the capacity, we have a bright future for our party.
Prior to the Constitutory work, I'm sure as a general who led your forces to the battlefield, you would have been wondering what could have cost you the 2016 election, because I know the NEC went into the elections confident of winning the elections. Before the committee or the Constitutory group finished their work, what did you think, or what did you feel would have cost the elections in 2016?
I'll say that there are many factors that resulted in our loss. It's like it's like when you ask several people to describe the elephant. Depending on which part of the elephant you're touching, you will describe it differently. If you're touching the leg, you say it's a tree. If you're holding the tail, you say it's a snake. You know, if you're holding the ear, you describe it as something else. So it's not due to just one factor. It's due to several factors. I'll say that first, there were some issues when we were in government that hindered us. You know, we could have done much more than we did in the period that we had. We took over after an election, and our opponents who we went into the election with disputed the result, and so decided to take us to court. And so for almost a year, there was a wait-and-see attitude. Ghanaians were glued to their TV sets. We could not focus on the job that Ghanaians had given us on our mandate. It was only after the court case was over and the court ruled that we had won legitimately that we could now focus and start to work properly. I mean, donors adopted a wait-and-see attitude, investors, everybody adopted a wait-and-see attitude. And so the period left to us to really accelerate things was much smaller than we would have had if everything was normal. And so that was one of the first things that affected us. Aside from that, my government inherited an energy crisis which really crippled the economy, and I decided to tackle it frontally. I took personal responsibility for the crisis. And you know, things like this take time to resolve, and it took a while before we were able to get it back on track. If you remember, we ordered the car power ship, and then we also ordered the Ameri plant. That brought an extra fresh generation of 500 megawatts into the system immediately. So once that came into the system, then it resolved the energy crisis. So if you remember, in early 2016, I think in about January, February, we declared the crisis over. And for the rest of 2016, the power supply was fairly stable. And that is why when MPP say they resolved doom, so you ask them in what way? I mean, you've not added one single megawatt to generation. How could you have resolved it? It was resolved before they came into office. So Doomsday was one of the problems. Then aside from that, we had some distortions in the economy. You remember Professor Mills's government inherited the single spine salary structure from the Kofo administration. Now, we started working on the single spine, and it was in 2012 that they had completed putting everybody on the spine, and so now you had to pay the new salary levels and the arrears. And so from 2012, when I became president in the latter part, after the unfortunate passing of my predecessor, salaries and wages were gobbling up about 73% of tax revenues. And so by the time you paid salaries and wages, you essentially had just about 27% of revenues left for everything else. And so we needed to come out with strategies that could grow the economy faster and keep expenditure at a reasonable level, and be able to invest in social infrastructure, social and economic infrastructure. And so restructuring the economy, that's how come we did the Century Forum, to get a consensus on the economy, and then also to come up with the homegrown fiscal policy, we called it. And once we had done that, we decided that, look, we needed policy credibility because all our international partners did not think that we were going to be able to implement the homegrown fiscal policy by ourselves. And so we needed a stamp of an international financial institution to know that we'll keep within the promises we've made. And that's why we went to the IMF. In the first year, the IMF restricted us to 5% of central bank borrowing, not more. And we lived with it in 2015. In 2016, it came to zero. And so all the expenditures we made in 2016 to finance government budgets were from our own revenues, not a single cedi from the central bank. You know, so that was part of the problem, the economy, restructuring it, you know, solving the energy problem. There was an energy sector debt. We had to find a way of ring-fencing it and all that. And so that also affected performance, and we could have done better. But coming to the party, we had this unity in the party for some reasons. we had elected a new national executive, and it will be frank, I mean, there were fractures in the national executive. There were factions, people were not talking to each other, and so on and so forth.
Did you know this as a president?
It came to my attention, but it was difficult to resolve some of the issues. Some of the issues seemed to be a bit irreconcilable, and so even though efforts were made by some people to try and sort them out, we couldn't. And so the national executive was not working, you know, in a very united fashion. I believe that we should have done more to try and resolve the issues, but they say hindsight is 20/20 vision. So that affected it. Then apart from that, after we had done our primaries at the constituency level, I believe that we could have more diligently resolved the fallouts. Like I told you, people were dissatisfied as a result of the process, and so some people decided to run independent, others, you know, undermine their colleagues and all that. We normally have a committee that goes around and reconciles. I don't think this time that work was done effectively enough, and so in most of the constituencies, there are many constituencies where won the presidential, lost the parliamentary, you know, and that affected the party. And then apart from that, I would say that there was apathy amongst our supporters. What happens is, in the past, when we had the revolution, killers of the revolution sacrificed themselves for national development. They didn't expect any reward in return. But we've transitioned into a democratic period. And what happens is, if people join the party and they're activists for the party, they expect that when the party comes into power, they also will have access to the opportunities that, you know, being in power has to offer. And I don't think that we paid attention to that reward system. One assumes that it will be handled at the sub-level, you know, and of course the presidency was dealing with doing so in economy and things, and so we did not pay much attention to what was happening at that level, you know, and so people felt that they were entitled to some certain opportunities.
So was there a reward system in place in the first place?
Well, the thing is, once you're empowered, there are opportunities that are available to all Ghanaians. And what happens is, as president, you swear an oath to do justice to all manner of persons. It means persons who are in your party, persons who are not in your party, persons who don't belong to any party. But how you balance that out and make sure that, of course, those who work for you to come into power also have a certain fair share of whatever opportunities are available is something that you must look at. And so I think that on hindsight, one would have thought that your ministers and DCs and things were handling it, you know, but I think that it requires the personal attention of the president to make sure that, you know, they are looking after the welfare of some of the people who work hard. I've said in the constituency that the president is not available in every constituency to know who are the hard-working activists and things. That is at the level of the MPs, the DCs, and others. They can identify, so this woman organizer, she's killed herself for the party. And so she's killed herself for the party, and there are opportunities like Maslow knows that she's a trainer. She's a Ghanaian. She's entitled to be able to benefit from it. And so I think that in future, if I get the opportunity again, I'll pay more attention to what is happening at that constituency level, rather than just leave it to the party and those other people. A lot of the complaints I got was that when we come into office, as soon as you appoint DCs and ministers and things, they build a big wall around their houses, and then when you go and you really want to see them about something, they tell you the person is not in. I mean, all those complaints have bubbled up, and I thank God that I've had the opportunity to go around the whole country. I think it's opened my eyes to a lot of things.
But is that to suggest there was a link between the party and the government?
I think so. We're in touch with the party, you know, all the time, and I guess that in future we must look at that relationship even more. I am thinking, and it doesn't mean that it's a done deal. I'm thinking that in future we must have a point person who is able to be like a liaison between government and the party. I'm thinking of something like a presidential staffer, you know, who is in charge of government-party relations. We've had it in the past in President Rawlings' time, where the presidential staffer, Nia Debo's account, who was in charge of ACDRs and others, because that was a particular area that the government wanted to be sure that it managed well.
Yes.
And so if government wants to be sure that it makes successful, something to do with the party, having, somebody who constant this thing is to keep an eye on that sector will be important. So a presidential staffer in charge of government party relations is something that I will consider favorably in the future. But after all, this would all be subject to consultation.
You're still here with me on your power station, Radio Gold 90.5 FM. It's 5 minutes after 9, and I'm here with the former president, Dramani Mahama. He's a flag bearer aspirant for the NDC. We are talking about numerous issues. Now, you have earlier made
I'll just mention the final point on why the party lost. So the final point was the very lofty promises of our opponents. It was like, just promise anything as long as you win political power. And we questioned in the end that, look, I mean, a lot of these promises are pie-in-the-sky promises, and they're just being done to gain political power. We will continue to tell you the truth. But sometimes these promises sound very nice in the ears, but realization of the promises can be a challenge.
It's interesting you describe the promises as lofty, because if you ask any government spokesperson, they'll tell you all the promises they made to Ghanaians, they are fulfilling them. CSHS, they've done so, planting for food and jobs, reduction of taxes, healthcare delivery, all these things they say they've done. One district, one factory, one village, one dam. They say they've done all these things.
And you go out into the population and ask them if they feel satisfied that those promises have been realized. Let them continue to live in a fool's paradise and say they delivered on their promises. I've gone around the country, people are disappointed. And so let the government communicators continue saying they've achieved. I mean, the other time I was driving past, and they dug one of the dams by the Uti River. I mean, there's a river flowing there. Why would you go to get dammed by a river to supply water to whom? And those dams, really, if they had told the electorate that those were the dams they were talking about, the electorate would have said, look, I mean, these are not things that really would transform our lives. Because those dams, they call them dams, and at the time I challenged them, I said, are these dams or dugouts? Be clear what you're talking about. And they say, oh, dams, for agriculture and what and what. Those dams are not for agriculture. Most of those, they are called dugouts. And actually, in the villages, they are used for cattle watering. Since we provided boreholes and clean drinking water, before people used to drink water out of them. But since we provided boreholes and clean drinking water, small town water systems, people don't use that water for drinking. And so mostly, they use them to water their cattle and so on and so forth. You cannot use them for agriculture too because the water is limited. The dams that you can use for agriculture are dams that are fed by some water source. And so as you take the water out, it is replenished. But these are for harvesting rainfall. And so many of them dry out even before the rainy season is over. Yeah. And so there's a limit to the quantity of water you can take out of it, even for agricultural purposes. And so, really, I don't know if there are 12 people that those were the dugouts they were talking about. I'm sure people would have thought differently about it. But, well, I've seen some of them. They look more like ponds. Maybe you describe them as ponds.
Now, let's move on to a point you made earlier about how you are sought after. I've seen you in Kenya, on international assignment, everywhere you find President Mahama is there. Why would the man who is sought after by the international community suddenly decide to want to contest as flag bearer of the NDC? At what point did you decide you want to contest as flag bearer of the NDC? Because the point that we made earlier, when the NDC had lost the elections, that your family had said that you're not going to contest. You're not interested in the presidency or the flag bearership. Again, at what point did you decide that you want to contest? And what's compelling you to contest?
Well, let me clear that thing. There's never a family meeting where my family decided that I shouldn't contest again. I don't know, that story has been carried over and over. It's been attributed to my small brother, Ibrahim. But there has never been any family meeting where the Mahama family decided that I should never contest elections again. Absolutely false. And so let me debunk that once and for all, because I've seen people continue to repeat it and all that. I believe that the greatest service one can do is service to your God and country. Service to your God and country. And as long as one has life and strength, you must put yourself at the service of your God and country. And so I don't check that challenge, to put my services put my talent at my country's service. God has blessed me. I'm alive. I'm healthy. I've garnered talent and experience over the years of more than 20-something years in public service. And so why should I deny my country of that service? The easier option would be to say, oh, take retirement and just live in peace and serenity, The stronger and more difficult option is to continue to work, for your country and not deny your country that talent. If, after all, we are in a constitutional democracy, we no longer take a gun and force ourselves on people. People decide. And so if I offer myself and the people of Ghana say, yes, we like the job you did did not finish what you were doing, we want you to come and continue. And if the law allows it, I'm not infringing any law. The Constitution says you can do 2 terms. It didn't say that the 2 terms should be consecutive. The 2 terms could be at any time, but it says you cannot do more than 2 terms. I've done 1 term in office. And so why should I deny my country of my services?
Apart from the country, and apart from the fact that there are no, bars preventing you from, contesting, you as an individual, what's that compelling drive to want to contest?
I think I have something to offer. And Ghanaians have seen the track record of what I can offer. I believe there are many areas where the change that happened has not been as positive as one would have expected. I think there are many areas where, the kind of meticulous planning that we have laid out in terms of improving various sectors has not been followed through properly. And Ghanaians will be the judge.
But they've been the judges before. You have been in power for 4 years, your first term. They saw what you did. Yes, the infrastructure, everything was there. And yet they said, no, we'll not give you the chance to, rule over us again in 2016.
Well, that was the election of 2016. There have been several cases, where judgments have been influenced by a lot of propaganda. My government was subjected to very strong propaganda by our opponents. I mean, all the claims of incompetence and corruption and so on and so forth have proved to be more propaganda than, reality. I mean, if you look at the time we were in government, and that I've said it several times, I've said the courage to be able to conduct regime accountability is the true test of the fight against corruption. To be able to hold your own accountable is the true test of the fight against corruption. But for regime accountability, to take over and just prosecute your political opponent, it's not something that takes courage on anybody's part. And our government did a lot of work to really put this country at the stage where we're on the brink of transformation. We had to do a lot of heavy lifting. We had to carry out reforms. Not everybody likes that kind of reform, you understand. It takes a lot of courage to do some of those things. And actually that created a platform for this government. This government should have just taken advantage of it and run. Unfortunately, suspicion and all that kind of thing has lost them 2 years. Instead of looking forward and collecting the baton and running forward, they kept looking back to, carry the blame game, and we inherited a mess, we did what and all that, And so it's made them squander their own time. But I think Ghanaians are the better judge. They just ask themselves, am I better off today than I was under President Mahama? They said we're sitting on money, yet the council so come there. Today Ghanaians are hungrier. They said all kinds of things. We don't need to borrow. It's a lazy man's way of development. Any idiot can borrow, all those kinds of things. And today, they're borrowing at a faster rate than anybody ever. 50 billion cedis in 2 years. 50 billion cedis in 2 years. When when we go with 40-something billion, if you go across the length and breadth of the country, you see water systems, you see health facilities, you see schools, you see port expansion, airport terminals. Every sector saw massive development. But after 50 billion in 2 years, what can you point at? Absolutely zilch, nothing.
But the government always says that the kind of economy they came to meet is not an economy that you profess you are left behind, and therefore they have to do a lot of groundwork to ensure we are on that pedestal where now we can jump.
That's been the mantra, since they took over. They actually said we left them no money, and I proved that we did. We went and we borrowed $2 billion for the cocoa season, the coming cocoa season. We didn't spend any of that money. This government came and made 2 billion cedis of consortium funding from cocoa syndication. And anybody should contradict me. They came and met that money. We had done the negotiations and everything, and we had agreed to bring $2 billion, and that money was left to them. We increased cocoa production to 950,000 metric tons of cocoa in the crop year before we left. We left $200 million in the Ghana Infrastructure Investment Fund, not cedis, dollars, $200 million we left in the Ghana Infrastructure Investment Fund, and we left it to them. In the sinking fund, we left the money that was supposed to pay off the 4 Eurobonds, $270 million or so, we left in the sinking fund, because that payment was due in 2017, I think in about September or so. And so we wanted to make provision for it so that any government that comes, whether it was us or whichever government, will not have a problem paying that money. We left that money, this government came and met it, and they used it to pay off that Eurobond. So why would you say that we left you? We left you extra oil revenue from Tenfield and Sankova. That revenue was not available to my government. We did all the work of bringing those oil wells on stream, and they started production in late 2016, and so the revenue started coming in 2017. All that revenue came to the administration that inherited us. So what kind of economy can you say was in a bad state that you inherited after all these things that I've talked about? So, well, it's just a mantra that normally, when you take over, you repeat in order to absolve, yourself of, some responsibility. Aside from that, we've talked about borrowing, and so they've borrowed 122 billion debt that they inherited. They've borrowed 50 billion in 2 years, is now 172 billion. And let me tell you about the debt to GDP. There's been a rebasing of the economy, and so it affects the debt to GDP. They say that the economy, the GDP is much bigger than we thought it was. And so you change the base year. So they changed the base year, I think, to 2010 or something like that. And so now the GDP is showing that it's much bigger than it was. And so when you do the rebasing, then it brings down the debt to GDP ratio. So now they say the debt to GDP ratio is 56%. And so it creates space for more borrowing. And so I think the government wants to go on a borrowing binge and leave the debts to the next government, because normally when you borrow the money, you have a 2 to 3 years grace period. So the next 2 years, if they go take 3 billion, they take Hydro, they take what, 2 to 3 years grace period. It is the next president who will come and start paying that money, And that's the thing. Somebody said, this year and next year are going to be the year of liquidity. Year of liquidity because they're going to borrow heavily and then leave the payments to somebody and probably walk away.
18 minutes after 9, if you take join us, I'm here with former President John Dramani Mahama. He's a sniper aspirant for the NDC. We're talking about himself, his party, his view of the administration of President Nana Akufo-Addo. And we're being listened to live on Diamond FM 93.7 in Tamale. You can also monitor us live on Radio XYZ 93.1. You can monitor us live on the Cellular 104.3 in Lipe, on Radio Sando 102.5 in Sando, China from 96.9 in Akachi, Local Radio 96.1, and then also live on GFM Radio in London. Mahama, you've spoken about what is compelling you to contest. So far, campaigning, what's been your message to the grassroots?
Well, my message to our grassroots, particularly with regards to our party, is that I will lead a modernization of the party. I think that political parties are in a new era, and we need to change the way we do things. And so we will modernize the party. One, we need to create a conducive environment for our party officials to be able to work. And so one of the things I said I'll do is to work with our members of parliament and the party executives to make sure that however modest it is, we're able to provide our own structures to house our party executives at the constituency level. And so we will try and raise funds so that in every constituency we have a decent office where they can conduct the business of the party. Aside from that, we want to train and reorient our party executives in order that, one, they know what their roles are, and two, they understand the ideology of the party. Happily, we have a party training school now, and so we're going to contract the party training school to go around all the constituencies and invite our constituency executives and branch executives and explain to them what the social democratic ideology of our party is. Because you must understand the underpinning of a party to be able to function properly in it. And then two, to teach them party administration. If you're a secretary, what is your job? If you're a chairman, what is your job? If you're a treasurer, what is your job? Because sometimes a lot of these little disputes that happen is because people think that their job functions overlap. And so you find a chairman doing the job of a secretary, or a secretary doing the job of an organizer. And so that training and reorientation is one of the things that I intend to undertake, of course, with the support of the party executives. Then aside from that, create a database of our party so that we know who are our members, what are their skills, what are their life opportunity, what do they want to see in their life opportunities, so that we can create a system where we do skills upskilling, especially for our youth, our young people. You know, I mean, what kind of skills would make them able to fit into the world of work. And so with that database, we know that this person finished JHS, this person finished FHS, this person is a trained nurse, this one is a teacher, this one is so and so. So that if there's any skills upscaling or any opportunities present themselves, we're able to help them to take advantage of those opportunities. Aside from that, we're also looking at a system of mentorship and training, so that, I mean, the young people coming out of university, our tertiary educational institutional network and all that, we assign them to some of our leading party members so that a certain mentorship program, you know, can happen, so that they're guided in the way that they should go in order that they're able to realize their full potential. But above all, it is to unify and strengthen the party. I think that what I'll do is, if I'm elected the leader tomorrow, is to find more time to interact with the grassroots. That has been one of my marks as a politician. From when I was a member of parliament to a deputy minister to a minister, I always made time to interact with the grassroots, the most ordinary people. Unfortunately, when I've climbed higher as vice president and president, of course, you don't get enough time to be able to do it. But I think that it is important to be able to continue to find time to interact with the grassroots of the party. And so one of the things to do would be to visit the constituencies more, be out more in the field, speak to the farmers, speak to the teachers, be in touch with what conditions are on the ground. But generally, my focus is to make more opportunities available to our young people, scholarships, jobs, help them to be able to realize their full potential.
Now, all these would definitely require money.
Yep.
I've heard some executives of the party express how broke the party is. Where is the funding for these beautiful ideas going to come from?
Well, we'll fundraise. We're fundraising already. I mean, when we were required to file our nominations, and the party set it at 400,000. Yeah, a few people came together and said, look, let's raise funds. And so they came with the hotline, the star, something, and put it out there. Our MCs all came and says, look, we'll chip in 1,000 Ghana cedis each. And then anybody who is able, we had people coming from Ododo, Tamale North, some with 5 cedis, some with 1 cedi, you know, and we were able to raise enough money to not only pay the nomination fee, but we had extra money to fuel the vehicles as we went around the constituencies and so on and so forth, and pay some of the expenses of the campaign. Tomorrow we have our primaries. Yeah, we're fundraising to finance our primaries, and so it's something that we can do. We can fundraise to be able to meet some of these plans that we have. And I want to take the opportunity of this interview to thank all those who have contributed to this effort. I mean, there have been wonderful people some who want to be known, some who want to remain anonymous. They don't want to be known because, you know, they are in sensitive positions where knowing how opponents operate, if they know that they contributed to my campaign, they would immediately deal with them. So those who want to remain anonymous, and for those who are known, I just want to say thank you. I'm most grateful for all the effort and all the help that you have given. Over this week, people have come with donations. They say, look, I hear you're going for your primaries on Saturday. This is my widow's mite. I went to Elembele constituency, and there was one of our supporters. He gave me 200 cedis, but where he was in the rural area, for him to have come and given me 200 cedis and said, look, President Mahama, this is all I have, but take it, and, you know, I can't finance your campaign with it. At least it can buy you petrol. I've forgotten what his name is, but Boa will remember his name. You know, I was impressed. And for me, it is contributions like that that make me even more emotional than the other ones, you know. And so, I don't remember his name, but that contributor in Elembele, I salute you, you know, for the symbolic gesture that you did. And may God replenish it greatly. I remember his face. When I see him, I recognize him, but the name has just escaped me. But yes, we can raise funds to finance these things.
You spoke about the changes you'll be bringing if elected, God willing, tomorrow. Now, one of the major accusations that was leveled against you as a president was the fact that top officials said that they could not have access to you as president. How confident should your members be this time around if you are giving the note, they would actually have access to you?
I don't know where that accusation is coming from. Do you know where I lived when I was president?
Yes, I know.
I did not move out of the residence I used as vice president. It was around Nafti, and you'd have seen there were some barriers there. Every morning, we had a whole group of party grassroots activists standing at the barrier waiting to see me. They write their names and they bring it in. We let them come, they sit in the pouch. I come and I listen to everybody. This thing about accessibility is something that I've thought about. And I said, where does it come from? Of course, the president has a country to run. So it's not every time that you want to see him that he will be immediately accessible. And there are times when you have very limited time. Somebody wants to talk to you, but you have a program you must attend, and you must arrive on time. And so you must have to leave at a certain time. And so there are people that you will not be able to attend to because as president you have to go somewhere and be there on time. And so I just think about it. Maybe I probably was accessible. I didn't live in the castle. In the castle, can you go through the castle gate and say you were looking for President Rawlings or looking for President Atamils? How many people went into the castle to see Prof? You know, I tried to see as many people as I could, but somehow he just persisted that you can't see him. Look, my ministers and other officials, as a cabinet, just ask everybody who worked in the office, how many of them didn't follow me up to my office? After cabinet, actually the whole cabinet, everybody wants to see the president to discuss one program in a sector or the other. They all follow me in my lift up to my office, and they sit. I see them one by one on Thursdays until I finish with all of them. But if the general conclusion is that I should be even more accessible, then we'll put in an arrangement. Maybe one of the things I'm thinking about is maybe every 2 weeks or so there's an office for the leader of the party in the party headquarters.
Okay.
So maybe every 2 weeks or so, go and spend a whole day in the party office and interact with the executives and see as many people as you can. But like I was saying, one of the things that has distinguished me as a politician was that I had the ability to mix with ordinary people and go to the ground. And so maybe the responsibilities of the presidency made that impossible for me to do in that 4 years.
Yeah.
But if I do get another opportunity, I'd like to spend more time in the field, going to the ground, meeting people and all that, instead of getting stuck in the office. I don't know what kind of government these guys are going to leave us, but I hope it's not going to make one have to do the kind of heavy lifting that we did in the past, and that it's going to free up the president to be able to do other things, And so I think that in our attempt to, I was a bit handsome, and I wanted to make sure that everything was going well, and so maybe if you have effective ministers, you can leave more of the work to them so that you can attend more to what the people's issues are.
Is it that you didn't have effective ministers? That's why you were caught up with a lot of the work yourself?
We have fantastic ministers, and I can tell you, pound for pound, just take any of the current ministers and my ministers who were in the same ministry, and you'd see that we had quality ministers. But maybe my own anxiety to push things quickly, and I knew that 1 year of ours had been wasted by a court case, and so we needed to get things moving as quickly as possible. So maybe that anxiety to push things, is one of those things that kept me busy, especially doing so. Those were I took personal responsibility, and so I had to make sure the energy sector took a lot of my time, because I had promised the people of Ghana that I would resolve the problem. And so I had to pay attention to the energy sector, I had to pay attention to the education sector, I had to pay attention to the economy. We started, Nana Jane was doing fantastic, wonderful education minister, and she came with all the planning for the progressive free SHS, because that's what the Constitution says. And we knew that implementing the free SHS goes hand in hand with infrastructure development. And that's why we started the community-based schools. Because if we had built all the 200 and each school takes at least 1,000 students, then you create 200,000 new spaces for children who want to access secondary education. And so that's why we started those community-based schools while we implemented the free SHS. We started with day students the first year. The second year, we added 140,000 boarding students. And we're going to keep adding until we were able to cover as many as possible. Unfortunately, this government came. We said, look, hold a stakeholder conference so that you can create a consensus around it. And they just refused to heed this thing, said they were going to do it in 3 years without adequate infrastructure. And that is the crisis that they have faced. Suddenly you find that you don't have enough dormitories, you don't have enough administration blocks, you don't have enough dining halls, you don't have enough libraries, not enough classrooms, and so congestion occurs, and then you have to come with this double track system, which parents dislike. The double track system is something that parents don't like. And so, at least, just eat humble pie, and the schools that you abandoned, because I initiated them, just take them and finish them. 123 of them are given on contract. Ask the contractors to go back. They've all abandoned site because they're not being paid. The ones that they say they're working on are the World Bank ones. We took a loan to build 23 of them, and that money is sitting there. And so those ones are continuing because we procured the money before we left. The others were supposed to be funded through the GET fund. Unfortunately, they are taking money out of the GET fund. They have this realignment and capping policy, and so they take money out of the GET fund. Then they take some money again out of the GET fund to pay teacher trainees. And so by the time they have taken all that money out of the GET fund, there's not enough money to pay the contractors to finish the schools. And so I've gone around the country, 275 constituencies. I've seen the schools at various levels of completion. Some have been roofed, windows have been put in, except with furniture and other things to finish. Others are at the third floor, fourth floor. You know, if this government had diligently continued and finished at least those that we gave a contract, 123 of them, you would have 123,000 new spaces in secondary school to fill. And so these are issues that, you know, Ghanaians are not pleased about. And I think that better planning could have avoided some of these pitfalls that this government has created for itself.
I would definitely bring you back to the educational sector, and we'll take a look at the corruption, the fight against corruption, because these were key issues during the 2016 elections. But importantly, tomorrow is the day where the NDC would choose its leader going into the elections 2020. Taking what you said, how would you describe the processes leading to tomorrow?
Well, the processes have gone well, and I think that many issues have come up on the way to 23rd February. You know, originally it was supposed to be held on the 7th of December, but then the date for the Congress, you know, which was in November, made it impossible for 7th December to be a viable date, because the processes that have to be gone through before the presidential primary is held could not be accommodated within the period left between when the Congress took place to when the presidential primary was to be held on December 7th. So it was pushed back to 26th of January. And then if you remember, there was a court case that needed to be sorted out. And so it was decided to resolve the matter out of court. And so after the out of court settlement, then the next date of February 23rd was fixed. And so the party has gone through all the processes. They came up with the guidelines. They opened nominations, filing fees were paid, and they vetted the aspirants. All of us had to appear before the vetting committee, and were asked a lot of questions. It was like a job interview, you know, and afterwards the candidates who were vetted were passed, and we've been going round, and I really want to express appreciation, you know, to all the executives that I've met, and our branch executives, constituency executives that I've met. I mean, these are wonderful people. And I thank God that I had the opportunity to do this. I said during my rounds that I think it's a good thing. It shows that the NDC is a democratic party, and it also shows that NDC is a matured party. I don't have any problems that there are people contesting. I think it's a good thing for our democracy, and it's giving me the opportunity to go around and campaign. If you remember, in 2012, after the unfortunate passing of Professor Mills, we had 5 months to the election, and so a resolution was passed that I should be the candidate, and it was endorsed in Kumasi. In 2016, there was no such contest because I was the president then, and when nominations were opened, I went unopposed, and so there was no opportunity to go around. This time, because it's a contest of 7, everybody has had to go around and meet the delegates. And because we're doing a decentralized voting system, we're not doing a Congress system where we take people from constituencies to come and select the flag bearer. We're voting in all the 275 constituencies. And at first, we had thought we'll cluster constituencies so that we're able to go around quickly. Unfortunately, the regional executives and the constituency executives said they were not going to accept clustering, and that I should come to every single constituency. And so we've had to go to every single constituency one at a time and covered all the 275. So it gave me the opportunity to get to know the constituency chairmen. I know some of the branch chairmen. I recognize their faces now. I know their names and all that. And I think that it's a good thing for the future, because I have the telephone numbers of all the constituency executives and all of them. I can take a phone and call my chairman in Lambusier, or I can call Upper West Place, Baloro, or any of them. I can call them on the phone and talk to them. So I think it's been good for me. It's been a good learning experience.
Would you describe the process as being fair favor? Because we have had some of your contestants make the point that the party has been favoring one candidate, obviously being you. Would you describe the process as being fair?
Well, this is a process in which the people going to vote are the same executives. So the executives are the electorate. You understand? Every leader executive is voting. Every branch executive is voting. Every member of parliament is voting. So they are the electorate. You get what I mean?
Are you being favored? Do you see yourself as being favored?
Well, some of my opponents have their supporters amongst those who are going to vote. And definitely they will be executive members. And so people have been expressing their support for this candidate or the other, but I do believe that I'm blessed, that a lot of parties still have a lot of confidence in me, and they do believe that my leadership at this time is critical in order that the party can go into the electoral battle of 2020 and emerge victorious. I think that they have that belief, and I also am determined to, lead them, work day and night, for my party to come back into office and continue some of the very good work that we're doing.
I was thinking I was going to have a lot more time with you this year, but I've just been, hinted by my producers that we have 5 more minutes before we end the conversation. But for those of you who just joined us, I know we're being listened to live on J Live 95.5 in Sunyani. We are also being listened to live on Akin Radio 100.9 in Techiman, on Adunum FM 89.7 in Sankore. And we thank you all for sending your comments through. We acknowledge receipt of your comments that you sent to us this morning. But we can't end the conversation without touching base with the security of our country and maybe the fight against corruption. Let me start with the fight against corruption. How would you assess this government when it comes to the fight against corruption? Because you were tagged as being corrupt. Your government was tagged as being corrupt.
Well, we are in the face of post-regime accountability, and I have said that I stand ready to account for my period in government. My appointees and all those who work for me stand ready to account for their period, the period that they served in government. You find that a lot of the allegations against us were based on there was a lot of fake news. I was said to own a hotel in Dubai. I was said to have ships in Tokyo Harbor. A lot of things. We thought that these were things that Ghanaians would see through as false. They said that myself and my wife diverted 100 million World Bank money into Swiss bank accounts. I've challenged government to go ahead and investigate us. DKM, they said, belonged to myself and my wife. Today, you have all the investigative powers of the state. Go ahead and investigate and find out, if we have anything to do with DKM. But all these things were thrown around. My regret is that we did not debunk them as hard as we could. We're busy working. And so you thought that Ghanaians will be able to see through and see that these are not true. But the thing is, I have come to notice that when mud is thrown, if you don't clean it and respond, it sticks. And so, unfortunately, it continued, and it's created that perception. But we challenge government to, investigate, do whatever. And if any of my appointees fell foul of whatever the proper procedures are, fine. If they want to prosecute them, they can do. They are doing a few prosecutions. Everybody will have his day in court.
Do you see questions on the part of this government?
I'm coming to this government. But this government, you and I are in this country, and in the short space of 2 years, you can see some of the scandals. At the time, it was almost a scandal a week, and the president himself has become a clearinghouse for his appointees. When they fall short or anything happens, he clears them and says there's nothing in it. They went and did all these visa deals in Australia and things. Have you heard anything about it again? Nothing. Somebody else has to go and stay at home. After a while, they say, come back to work. That's all. You know, there are so many examples.
The president says investigations have been done. That's what he said.
Have you seen any investigations?
Not seen any report, but he says that investigations have been done into this matter, like Mr. Farrell Habibeh and the rest of them. He says investigations have been done.
And they've been cleared. So there was no visa scandal in Australia. When journalists like you, names were used to, you know, take visas and transport people to Australia. And so that's why we say the president himself has become a clearinghouse for his appointees. Look at what happened in Norway, you know, until the matter was raised in Parliament. We're going to pay $12 million for a property that had sold the year before for 3-point-something million. And that matter has, the president says there's nothing in it, he's cleared it. You know, meanwhile, the question you need to ask yourself is, if the owner of the house from which we were buying it was a genuine seller, after making all those modifications to the house, and Ghana says won't buy it again, nobody's come to make demands of us or anything. It shows that whoever it is and who is hiding behind that, you know, well, it's a deal gone bad and doesn't want to be known. Otherwise, the person would have sued the government of Ghana and says, look, pay me the cost of the modifications I did to the house. You know, and so I can see there's nothing there. The scandals are just so many. Ghana is for promotion authority, what. Every day you just hear it. People have become numb to it. But let's just use the proper indicator for measuring corruption, which is the Transparency Corruption Index. Yeah? Our performance as a government has been far better than this government. Far better. We achieved the highest score of 47. And when we left office, we are 43. In 2017, we went down to 40, and now we've come to 41. That's a 1 point increase. And the government says, oh, we should pat them on the back for a 1 dot increase, you know. And so even if you use the most modern instruments for measuring corruption, you know, then our government did far better. We protected whistleblowers properly. For instance, take the National Service Scheme and the ghost names. It was a whistleblower who brought it to our attention. The BNI came and briefed me, and I told them to investigate. And they investigated. We sacked 100 and something people, 30 something people were put before trial. Have you ever heard the whistleblower's name? We have protected that person. The person's name has never been known by anybody. And yet it was somebody who brought us all that information. We investigated the JIDA. I set up the committee that investigated JIDA. Today, painfully, a colleague of mine, member of parliament, is in jail because of JIDA. But in the interest of accountability, we had to investigate it and look at the issues that were there. There were several investigations that we did. We retrieved monies. The group of companies around RLG, we retrieved 50 million Ghana cedis back into government coffers. We cancelled people's contracts, we dismissed people. That is what we call regime accountability. When you do post-regime accountability, that's easy to do. If we take over from this government and then we decide to investigate all those scandals that the president is covering up, it doesn't take courage to do that, because that's all they are your political opponents. But when you hold your own people to account, that is the true mark of the fight against corruption. And we did that. We brought the National Anti-Corruption Action Plan, and we were following the processes of the National Anti-Corruption Action Plan, because the fight against corruption is not anecdotal. It's not based on what is the fake news and the other things that swirl across. You need a plan to fight corruption. Since this government came into office, have you heard about NACAP? I don't think that the reporting procedures are even taking place. Every sector is supposed to report, you know. I appointed the Auditor General, Mr. Domelogo, because I had known him before, a man of integrity. And I said, look, we need to, you know, put somebody who can turn this place around. And today we all are impressed with the work he's doing, you know. And so these are some of the solid things that you do, you know, in order to fight corruption. Not become a clearinghouse when they come and make allegations against your appointees, oh, there's nothing in it, oh, there's nothing in it. When you do that, you leave a pile of cases that post-regime will be investigated. Better for you to investigate it in your time than leave it to somebody to come and clean up that mess. And so, Mr. President, you're listening to me. Investigate all those allegations and let Ghanaians feel satisfied that you're holding your people to account.
We'll end the conversation shortly, but I want your views on the state of affairs when it comes to the security of our country. Virtually, vigilantism, Ayawaso West Wagon, and the rest of them. Sitting and watching the Commission's work and the revelations, what do you gather?
Well, I think that Ghanaians feel very unsafe under this present regime. Even in our time, when security was taken as a priority and people felt much safer, the MPP accused us that people were not feeling safe and that when they come they'll be doing so. Today, Ghanaians feel insecure and unsafe. I mean, look at your colleague who was just murdered. Somebody just went and shot him, you know, and still now we don't know who did it. You know, this GPHA woman who was killed in her home, the deputy manager of Ghana Water Company shot on the road. You know, there's a state of killings and things, and now there's a new phenomenon of kidnapping. You know, a child gets lost and somebody could give you a strange call, and, you know, so I think that the president should be up and doing, and the police service and the security services should be up and doing. There are all kinds of things. That leads me to the vigilante matter. You know, parties have always had arrangements to provide security for themselves in times of electioneering, campaigning, and all that. We used to call them macho men. You remember?
Yes.
They were not trained. All they used to go to the gym was to go to the gym and raise weights and develop muscles, you know, to intimidate people. But really, they were not armed, they were not trained, you understand? And sometimes when their actions went out of hand, the police rounded them up and went and locked them up. Everybody knew that the police were in charge of security, ultimately. But the phenomenon of militant vigilantism is a creation of the Akufo-Addo government. Not only his government, even as a candidate. They started all this, all that guy, if we don't win, Afghanistan, you know, and all those kinds of very, very threatening, you know, and they urged their youth to be militant. You have to be militant. We must win this election at all costs. They started all that in 2012. And then, you remember when we were in office, we deported 3 South African mercenaries. They were brought in here to train the invisible forces and the Delta forces. And so, really, Akufo-Addo is the father of militant vigilantism. That's the next level that this phenomenon has got into. For the first time, we saw party vigilantes in uniform, in those black T-shirts and jeans trousers. Before the macho men, everybody used to wear his own shirt. Some would be in red, some would be in green. They never wore a uniform thing. So it was beginning to look like a paramilitary organization. Then they won office. So now they have the state apparatus to be able to even take it to the next level. And so we saw vehicles transporting these Delta forces and invisible forces to Asuchari. There's a state training facility there for training personnel of the VVIP units who protect the presidency. And these Delta forces and things were sent there for training. And they were trained and brought back. It is some of them that were involved in this Ayawaso West Wagon. They've all been given national security cards and all that. So they are national security agents. And so if you ask, you say, I work with national security. It is them they brought together and did that operation using the SWAT vehicles and all that. National security as an agency is not supposed to have a standby force. It coordinates the existing security services. And so for national security to have had a force that is deployed, they said they were going to search for weapons on the day that there's a by-election taking place, you know. And they discharged weapons and people were injured and all that. I think that took it to the next level. And so yesterday at the SONA, the president spoke about it towards the end of his speech. And he said that the political parties should come together and discuss it and see how they can disband these vigilantes. I spoke about it the day before. I was in German constituency and I told them that as the president, the buck stops with him and he should take the initiative to resolve this issue of militant vigilantes. I'm happy he heard what I said in German South constituency, and the next day he talked about this. But I think that the structure of what he's trying to do is not right. The two parties alone cannot deal with this issue because the state has become a part of it. Let me explain to you. The vigilantes they trained, have been absorbed into the security services. So now they are embedded in the security services. And so if you say the party should disband the vigilantes they have, or let's say, because on our side, some individuals, not the party, because of what the NPP is doing, have also come up with this hawks thing. I go around and I see hawks all over the place, you understand. And when you ask, they say, oh, well, don't you see the invisible and Delta forces, we also must have our own to match them, And so you go around and see that, yeah, there are hawks. I've seen dragons somewhere, I've seen eagles somewhere, I've seen other kinds of things somewhere.
Are you in support of it?
I believe that our security services can protect us. We've held elections over and over again without these hawks and Delta forces and everything. And the security forces have been able to provide us with adequate security. I believe that. I've never felt threatened. I've been a member of parliament. I've stood 3 terms, in parliament. I've been a vice president. I've stood before. And in all those times, you had the police and others. The military were always on standby. And we had peaceful elections. It was the introduction of President Akufo-Addo's invisible and Delta forces and Kandahar boys and Borga bulldogs that has created the current situation that we have. And so I'm happy he's taking the initiative to try and resolve the matter. But I think just asking the parties to meet and resolve it is not enough. There are several other stakeholders that must be brought on board. I mean, you have the Peace Council, you have security experts who all have to be invited to the table to look at the phenomena of what to do and how to deal with it. How are we going to delist the vigilantes who are embedded in the security services already? How are we going to delist them out of there or neutralize them in a certain way? These are all questions that will bubble up, and NDC and NPP on their own cannot resolve those issues.
But would you say the president has shown leadership in the fight against vigilantes?
Well, I called on him to show leadership. Listen to the tape of what I said in German. I said that one, he is the president of this country, and if we have to solve this vigilante issue, he must take the initiative to resolve it. So one, the initiative has been shown, but I think that the structure he's suggesting won't work. Just to tell MPP, invite your brothers NDC to come and sit and see how you can ban vigilantes, it's too simplistic. There should be a better structuring of the issue, and there should be good faith. People were shot and injured, you understand. It is criminal. The police must be carrying out investigations in the criminality of it. The fact that there's a commission of inquiry taking place does not mean that the police investigation must stop. But I've not heard that the police has invited anybody to even start any investigation about what happened in Ayawaso West Wogon. There's an attempt to equalize with what happened in Kumasi. What happened in Kumasi was criminal, and I immediately came out and said that the police must investigate, find out who murdered this guy and injured the other one, and let the law take its course. But what do we see in Ayawaso West Wogon? Cover-ups, attempts, even though people have been identified who were part of those who did what they did. Everything is being done to cover up the matter. None of them has been invited. The one who slapped St. George, by now, police should have his statement and his identity. A whole honorable member of parliament, and we all saw the video. And when I showed the video to the international community, hey, I'm painting Ghana black. Ayawaso West Wogon is black paint. There's nothing pink or yellow or green or white about it. It is black paint, and you cannot color it in any other color. So whoever you show those videos, and those videos, I didn't manufacture them. I mean, you, the media, you showed them. They are all over social media. I was getting calls from Nigeria and other places and saying, what is happening in Ghana? Because when you see some of those videos, it looks like Afghanistan. It doesn't look like Ghana. It looks like some war zone. You see somebody with an axe hitting somebody on the back, you know, a defenseless person is unarmed. And, I mean, you can't believe this is Ghana. And for a person like President Akufo-Addo, who prides himself as a Democrat and a fighter for human rights, I don't think he can sleep if he sees those videos. I wonder if the president has seen them, because he has described them as isolated incidents. Isolated incidents. If he was there in the brunt of the brutality of those people, you should have seen the boots they were wearing, how they were kicking the guy, the one who was shot in the leg. Bone fractures from his leg were lying on the floor. It was that bad. The bone fractured, and some of the pieces of the bone were lying on the floor in front of the MP's house. And so these are things that we need to deal with. Everybody has known me as a man of peace. I'm not a person who likes violence. But when I saw what happened at the House of West Warburg, you know, we needed to calm tempers. And so one had to appeal to our base and let them, you know, remain calm. Probably why they said what I said. I mean, some of our people could have taken things into their own hands. And so please, I think the initiative is good, but it's too simplistic. The two parties alone cannot resolve. You know, there must be a better structuring to it. And I think that it needs time for this to be structured properly. And then we will be prepared to take part in any such meeting to ensure that we guarantee the peace of our country.
We are ending the conversation, Mr. Mahama. A final word from you to the voters who will be going to vote, God willing, tomorrow.
Well, I want to express my appreciation to all of them, to all our party executives and all who have contributed to bringing us to this stage. And that I hope that God grants journey mercies to all our delegates to travel to the voting centers in peace, vote peacefully, and then also get back home in peace. I believe that we need to be one united front as a party, and we must work together if we are to achieve victory in the year 2020. And so let's all stay together, let's be united, and let tomorrow's voting go peacefully. We have spoken to the Ghana Police Service to provide security at all the 275 voting centers. And so the Ghana Police Service is going to be in charge of security. Nobody else is going to provide security. And so if anybody goes there as a vigilante and you say you are a security person, the Ghana Police Service will deal with you. And I believe that we can have a peaceful election tomorrow. And I'll just appeal to the delegates. I'm number 3 on the ballot paper. And so when you receive the ballot paper, you count from the top. The first, the second, the third is John Dramani Mahama. And so I appeal to them to cast their vote so that I can lead the party to victory in 2020. But let me say finally that it's been a sad morning for me. And I just want to express my condolences to Sati and the children on the passing of our comrade Lee Okran. Lee has been a fighter in the trenches. We've been in the trenches together. And for everybody who knows him, we have lost a very, very fine member of our party. And so may his soul rest in perfect peace. I'll be visiting the family this afternoon to extend my condolences. I visited him while he was in the hospital. Our hope was that he will get better. Unfortunately, it's God who gives and it's He who takes. And so my sincerest condolences to Leo Kran's family, especially Auntie Sati.
I'm grateful, sir, for your time to join us today.
Thank you very much.
And that's former President John Dramani Mahama and flag bearer aspirant for the NDC joining us this morning from around 8:40. further conversation on the party, the nation, and tomorrow.